petitioner, is that correct?
Yes.
I would ask that anyone who is going to make a statement today, that they sign in. And then having done so, I would ask that they all stand and be sworn in. That's anyone that wants to make a statement today, including potentially you, Counselor?
Yes, I'll be making a statement. I don't know if it's not a sworn statement, but
Yeah. Anyone who's going to make a statement today, do you promise to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Everyone's answered audibly. And you are the petitioner, is that correct?
Yes.
And for the record, would you state your name and your address?
Sure. David Kerpel, last name is Kerpel. Address is 1630 Portage Pass in Deerfield, Illinois, 60015.
Okay, and that is an address that is different than the proposed request today, is that correct?
That is correct.
And for the record, my name is Michael McHenry. I am the hearing officer. I'll be conducting the hearing today. It's my duty to conduct this public hearing on the application that has been filed. I'm required to evaluate this application based on the evidence presented and also the standards that are set forth in section or subsection 4 of our code. Based on the evidence, I'll either recommend approval, modified approval, or denial. There will be a record made of the hearing today that will be available within 2 weeks. I would ask that anyone who makes a statement speak clearly, keep your voice up. I'm hard of hearing, but we want to make sure we have a good record. And understand that mine is only a recommendation. I am not either approving or denying the application. I'm making a recommendation to the county board. And following the hearing today, the Department of Planning and Development will prepare an ordinance incorporating my findings and my recommendations. That will then be submitted to the McHenry County Board at their next available meeting. If I were to approve this request, then a simple majority of the members of the county board who are then present, that would be all that would be needed for their approval. If I were to deny this request, then the petitioner would need a 3/4 vote of the county board members who are in attendance at that particular meeting. It's possible that either myself or the county board or staff can recommend or impose conditions on the request if it is to be approved. And there are standards that are required. I will pass out a list to the petitioner and ask that he address those standards. We have a few simple rules. This is a fact-finding matter. This is not adversarial. You will be treated with respect, and hopefully you will treat everyone here the same. And we're not going to follow the strict rules of evidence. If there are things that are considered to be out of order, I will address those. And I ask that you not talk over anyone. If someone is making a statement, let that person make the statement before you make a comment. If you are asked a question that's a yes or no question, I would ask that you not shake your head or go, but answer audibly yes or no. And the petitioner is entitled to make a statement both at the beginning of the hearing and also at the end of the hearing. Anyone who is in attendance who wishes to make a statement is certainly allowed to do so. So to the petitioner, I'd ask, what is your request?
My request,
Yes.
as far as a variance in this matter to allow dogs to be kept in the existing pole barn within the 100 feet lot line, 20 feet away actually from the lot line on the north. Also to have a variance on the south, allowing us to go within the 100 feet lot line for outdoor dog runs and other play areas, not outdoor dog runs, play areas for the dogs.
And you gave a different residence address than the property, is that correct?
That is correct.
You intend to live on the property?
So we don't intend to live on the property at least for the next 4 years. We have a child who is in high school in Deerfield. However, we do intend to have a caretaker live in the house that is there 24 hours a day, and that person's sole responsibility would be to care for the dogs. That would be their job.
You said we. Who is we?
Oh, my wife and I. My wife is also present today. I'm the president of Forever Home Dog Sanctuary, and my wife is vice president. And we also have a secretary and a treasurer and committee members.
And is that entity currently in effect?
Yes, it is. It was incorporated in February of 2022. We became a 501c3 not-for-profit status by the IRS in July of 2022.
And what is your business or occupation?
I am an attorney.
And are you a licensed attorney at this time?
Yes, I am.
And where do you practice?
I practice in Lake and Cook County primarily, sometimes in DuPage.
And what kind of work do you specialize in?
I practice family law.
And what is your interest in having a dog shelter?
So my interest is that this is something I wanted since I was very young. This has been my dream. This is what I wanted to do when I retired. I decided that I would not wait until I was older and that I would act on my dream now. And so starting in January of 2022, I began looking for properties and gathering a team together who would be able to effectively run a dog rescue. And I want to stress that a dog rescue or a dog sanctuary is different than a dog kennel. This is not a dog kennel. This is not a place where we are going to have dogs that are held and given up for adoption every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, every month. There's not going to be a lot of traffic going in and out. Instead, this is going to be where we are going to find dogs that are either going to be euthanized or are basically deemed unadoptable at dog shelters, and due to maybe their age or due to medical issues, basically dogs that nobody wants. And instead of having them spend the rest of their lives in dog shelters, we are going to take them out. We are going to give them the opportunity to be rehabilitated with dog trainers, and if they can be adopted or fostered out, great. They will then go to a home, but if not, they will spend the rest of their lives on this dog sanctuary.
Okay,
So,
but you've indicated it would not be a kennel per se where you're boarding dogs.
absolutely not.
And would you agree to a condition to that effect, that you would not be boarding dogs?
What is the definition of boarding dogs? People dropping their dogs off for vacations and during the day?
Right. and
Absolutely, no
charging a
problem.
fee.
I would stipulate to that.
Kim, is that a condition that could be imposed, that he's not to operate a commercial kennel?
Yes, well, the ordinance would require a conditional use permit to operate a kennel anyway, so he would not be permitted to, but if you felt more comfortable putting it in as a condition, we certainly can do that.
Okay, but for the people who are here potentially, who are objecting, they would understand that because he's not asked for a commercial kennel, he would not legally be able to operate that.
Correct.
Okay. And what is your personal experience with dogs? What causes you to do this?
Ever since I was young, I have rescued animals. I always wanted a dog when I was young. I couldn't because my father was allergic. We owned a rescue when I was in law school, which was in the late 90s. That dog passed away. We have 2 current rescues. However, my love for animals is so strong. I am a vegan. I do not eat animal products. I don't want to harm them. And every time I see a dog, I want to help it, if I see it on the street. So I want to go up to it. My wife could attest to that, but I don't think that'll be necessary. She'll probably say I like dogs more than people. So that is my interest. I feel that they give unconditional love, and they deserve a better life than a lot of them get.
And are you the actual owner at this time of this property?
No, I do not own this property. We have been in talks with the owners, but we did not want to purchase this property until we knew we would get a variance to allow the opening.
Okay. Do you have a current contract for the purchase of this property?
We do not. We did not. Number one, we didn't want to start negotiating price until we knew if we had a variance, but the other issue is that there is an existing impediment, I think, that the current owners placed on themselves by not getting a permit for some work that they did to a driveway. And that would be something that we need to make sure that is addressed.
It goes beyond the driveway. They put up a pole barn that has some violations on it. Isn't that correct?
Oh, I wasn't aware of any violations of the pole barns.
I'm not aware of any violations on the pole barn itself.
There's some open issues.
Yeah, it's open because there was the amount of gravel that was added around the building that was under that permit was exceeded what was allowed by the permit. So the building itself was not in violation, but the impervious surface that was added is what's currently in violation.
Okay, what hearing are we currently hearing?
Well, this is the one for the
Hang on a
variance.
second, to staff. Is this not 2022-045?
Yes,
Okay. Under comments conclusion, am I not reading violation 2022-128 is currently open for development in excess of 20,000 square feet without a stormwater management permit, and violation 2022-00300 is currently open for non-completion of inspections per the permit?
yes, and that has to do with the additional gravel that was added in excess of 20,000 square feet. So that would need to be remedied before we can close out the violation.
Okay, but there's more than simply gravel. There's a needed stormwater permit, is there not?
That's part of the building permit for the structure included, because it was over 20,000 square feet of impervious surface that was added, it triggers a stormwater permit. So that's where we're at with that.
Okay. I view that as more than simply gravel. Do you not?
Yeah, overall, yes, it's a total of over 20,000 square feet of disturbance. They were approved for, I believe, 19,900 or something like that, very close. But as soon as they exceeded 20,000, it triggered the stormwater permit requirements.
Okay. And the proximity to the lot line of that building, how does that?
So as an agricultural structure, they only had to be a minimum of 10 feet from the lot line.
Okay.
So it was permitted, at, I believe, 20 feet, which more than exceeded the requirement, just not for an animal care shelter.
So it's the potential change in nature that triggers this?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So at this point, have you put down any earnest money on a potential purchase of this property?
No,
I noticed that there was signage in front of the property indicating that if I called a certain number, I could make an offer to purchase the property. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Is the property still on the market for sale?
I believe so. We're prepared to make an offer within 48 hours of this ruling, or maybe within a week, I guess, since this permit issue also has to be resolved. We have to probably negotiate how they're going to address that as part of the purchase price. But we're prepared to take
And
that into account.
when the dog's time has finally come, and it's time for the dog to pass, which is always difficult on anyone, who is going to pay the vet bill?
We would. The dog sanctuary would.
And how about any burial fee?
Absolutely. We'll pay everything.
And how would that be funded?
The dog sanctuary. So all of these expenses will be funded. So we have about 10 different committees already set up with about 18 to 20 volunteers who are assigned to different committees. We have grant writing committees. We have large business fundraising committees. We have small business fundraising committees. We have social media. All of these areas are going to be used for fundraising. So we will have significant funds. We also just learned that this will be news to some of the people here, but we just inherited some money from a close friend of mine that left the money to the dog sanctuary.
Okay, but at this point, because the request hasn't been granted and you don't have ownership or possession of the property, you haven't raised any funds at this point, have you?
Actually, we have probably raised maybe $15,000, $10,000 to $15,000, maybe $20,000. But we also, in January, will be having significantly more than that.
Kim, before I kind of read the request of the application, I need some clarification. Indicates that David and Aaron Kerpel are the contract purchasers. Is that a correct statement?
I understand now that it's not. My understanding was that they had contracted to purchase it, so that is an error. We can correct that in the report.
Okay. And what, if anything, does that change in status mean to their request today?
It should not affect it because we do still have the signed applications from the property owners, which is what is required.
I'm presuming the property owner might be sitting behind you? No? Okay. You were shaking your head occasionally. All right, we'll get to that in a second, sir. Is the property owner here?
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
No.
Okay. All right. For the record, this would be the application 2022-045, David and Aaron Kerpel, who hope to be the purchasers of the property in question. The request is a variation within the A1 agricultural district to allow for a setback of 20 feet along the north property line instead of the minimum 100 feet required for an animal care shelter, and also a setback of 45 feet along the south property line instead of the minimum 100 feet required for an animal care shelter. And the location, the property consists of approximately 5.96 acres and is located on the east side, I can't pronounce it, it's Arnsdorf Road, approximately 750 feet north of its intersection with Illinois Route 173. The common or street address would be 10720 Zarnsdorf Road, Richmond, Illinois, Township of Burton. The tax ID or PIN number would be 0507-100-024. The current land use is single-family residential. Adjacent land use would be single-family residential to the north, south agricultural, west also agricultural, to the east would be vacant. And the current zoning is A1 agricultural, and to the north, south, east, and west would be A1 agricultural. On the 2030 plan, the land is designated estate. The municipal plans within 1.5 miles would be Fox Lake, no designation, Spring Grove Estate Residential. The property is currently improved with a 2-story brick and frame residence, brick patio, wood deck, gravel driveway, concrete walkway, frame shed according to platted survey, as well as a 20,000 square foot pole barn that was constructed on site in 2021. There are no wetlands on the area, and there was no need to get an NRI letter, and there are no floodplains of record on the site. It is, however, an elevated aquifer contamination potential. As previously referred to, there is a violation 2022-00128 for development in excess of 20,000 square feet without a stormwater management permit, and also a violation of 2022-00300 is currently open for non-completion of inspections for permit K-0691. And if the person who intends to purchase this property completes that purchase, they must be aware that they will be required to comply with those before it can be occupied. The structure appeared to have been constructed in 1978 with a valid permit. Jim, with his request, would that be a commercial, would this be viewed as a commercial building, this 20,000 square foot?
Yes, it would.
And is there any requirement that there be any kind of fire protection additionally because of its size and its use?
I would have to defer to our building division on the actual code requirements, but I believe structures of a certain size do require either some type of fire suppression or sprinklers, something like that.
Okay, is the petitioner aware that he could potentially have to put in a sprinkler system?
It's fine.
It's expensive?
It's for the dogs. It's not a problem.
Okay. One of the questions I always ask is, have you talked to your neighbors? Did you talk to your neighbors?
So when we first saw the property, we were with our realtor, Debbie Leable, L-E-A-B-L-E, who is here today. And Debbie went over there while we were looking at the property and I believe spoke with the wife who was there, and she explained what we wanted to do. I doubt they got as much detail as they did today, and we have more detail to share as well. And so I believe after that, she received a phone call that they would not be supporting the variance. And so I went there subsequently to take some photos, I don't know, maybe a few weeks later, and I knocked on the door because I wanted to try to explain a little bit more information in case they were concerned with, you know, what we were planning to do. And I believe their son was there. They were not there, but I left my card with my phone number. I did not hear back from them.
Did you find any of the neighbors agreeable?
I didn't talk with any other neighbors.
And have any neighbors approached you, or would they not have known how to do so?
They would not know how to do so. I did reach out to the neighbor, I think, across the road, Mr. Zarnstorff. Obviously not the original Zarnstorff, but him and his wife were happy to hear what we were doing, so they had no complaints. And I also spoke with a Ms. Wexler, and she lives in Richmond, but she's not a neighbor, but she also was a big supporter. I think there was another person in Richmond, but I can't remember who.
Okay. Technically, you're more Spring Grove than Richmond, isn't that correct?
What's that?
Technically, you're more Spring Grove than Richmond, isn't that correct?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with the area. I think the mailing address is Richmond, and in back of us is Spring Grove.
Correct. And when you talk to the person who owned the property across the road, that is currently vacant agricultural, is that correct?
That is correct.
So they would be the least likely people to have any concern or objection to this, wouldn't you agree?
Depending on what their concerns were compared to our neighbor, that is likely, yes.
Are you familiar with why this 20,000 square foot pole barn was constructed?
For horses, I believe.
Okay. And Kim, do you have any background as to that? It's a pretty sizable building and also seems taller than some of the horse
Yeah.
barns I've seen.
So agricultural exempt structures do not have a height limitation. I don't know what the height is. We don't require any specific review on the height of the structures when they're agricultural. They got the permit for, I believe, for either a horse arena or a horse stables of some type. So I believe that was the intention.
And subsequent to the construction of that building, were horses ever stabled there?
I'm not aware of whether they were or not.
Okay. And what kind of floor does that structure have? Is it
I
concrete?
don't know. Again, with agricultural, we don't do a building review. There's no building codes that need to be reviewed for agricultural buildings, so we don't regulate that.
It's a sand dirt mix floor.
With the potential change in the use of that building, would that sand floor be acceptable?
No. It would need to be brought up to commercial code standards.
Okay, can you explain for the petitioner what that might be?
Again, that I would have to probably defer to the building division. I would recommend speaking with them if this gets approved as to what might be required. But it most likely is going to require some kind of hard floor. It would require insulation, possible changes to the foundation depending on how this was constructed. As we mentioned, possible sprinklers or fire suppression, exit signs, all of the things that might be required for ADA compliance, things like that.
And are you aware that you might have to do that?
We are prepared to do that anyway. It is not appropriate for dogs to be running or lying or sleeping on the type of material that is there.
And in terms of the current construction of the pole barn, is there any insulation either in the walls or in the ceiling?
Not currently.
And what would you intend to do in reference to that?
So our architect is here, and we have discussed different options. So he might be in a better position, but based on what I have spoken to him about, because obviously we want the dogs to be warm, we want the people who are in there with the dogs to be comfortable. We also don't want the sound to travel outside the barn very easily, so we were thinking something along the lines of the pink the pink insulation with a sheet of drywall, and then possibly a space and another sheet of drywall, so that the sound could be absorbed in between. But there are also some other options, I think. Is that, yeah? Is that
You can
okay?
address those with.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, we have prepared to take care of not only sound insulation going out, but the sound being reverberated inside, as well as the temperature being comfortable for everyone.
The county has suggested consultation with an acoustic engineer. Is that something that you have already undertaken?
So my architect has been speaking with acoustic engineers for the last several weeks.
And the interior of the walls of the pole barn, are they wood, are they metal?
Right now, it's just a sheet of metal on the outside. So
Okay,
we
but what is that attached to, the sheet of metal? What's the interior construction?
vertical wood poles, correct?
It's like a wood skeleton.
Can you identify yourself?
Sure. My name's Chris Lonergan. I'm an architect with Keoxen Architecture. Currently, imagine a wood skeleton, and there's corrugated metal siding that's been attached to that on the outside.
What are the dimensions or the width of the wood skeleton?
I believe they're 6x6s, but I have not seen them in person.
Okay, so they're not necessarily 2x4, they would be wider potentially?
No,
than-
they're spaced probably 20 feet apart, roughly. So it's literally like if you made
It's a typical
like a little
pole barn.
model, yeah, like a little skeleton out of a house. That's the structure.
And would there then be adequate space for the installation of?
Yes.
Okay, and can you explain that, please?
So what we've discussed is basically we've got these vertical columns that are spaced roughly 20 feet apart. And we would look to be installing some type of infill between those columns. And there'd be we'd need a system of, wood furring, which would be those 2x4s. They'd be there, but they would not be structural. They would just be for the purpose of attaching insulation and an interior finish. And then between those, that furring, we would install some type of insulation. We've talked about, rigid insulation. We've discussed, like a batt insulation. And then there'd be, some type of wall finish on the outside of that, whether that be on the inside face of that, whether that be, it'd probably a single layer of 5/8 drywall, and then, some other finish on top of that, or additional layers of drywall as needed for sound attenuation.
Are there different types of insulation besides the solid and the non-solid? Are there forms of insulation that are more soundproof?
Yes. There are batt insulation, which it's composed more like a typical fiberglass insulation that you'd see like in your house, where it kind of looks like cotton candy. That's one type. Then they make another type that's a little bit denser than that. It's green in color. It's called mineral wool insulation. Those are typically what you'll see in tested assemblies, but rigid insulation, like David was mentioning, we have it's like the pink foam, basically. It comes in all different thicknesses. That could be another option.
And I have been to the property, I've not been inside the pole barn. What is the height of the pole barn?
I have not field measured it.
Do you know roughly the height of the pole barn? More than 10 feet.
Oh, yes.
And the wooden beams that are supporting it, how tall are they, if you know?
I don't know, but there are some photos from the listing that I could pull up. If there's an HDMI cable, I could show that if you're interested on seeing the inside of the building.
Yeah, I would be curious. Is it possible to put that on the screen? Does anybody know how to do that?
I've got the HDMI cable over here.
All right, let me see if I can make sure I have that. Oh, I don't have internet. I can use my phone, that's all right.
Sir, I could contribute some dimensions and so forth if you need.
I don't know who that is.
No,
I am Riley Vaughan's grandfather.
Oh,
I've spent hours out there, so I know the measurements and everything. I
Okay.
would actually contribute that.
All right.
For the record, would you state your name, please?
My name is Gary Baisley. I did sign in already, and I did take the oath.
Okay. And what is the height of the highest point of the wall, if you know?
I believe the walls are 18 feet tall at wall. Of course, the pitch is not. That's a truss built roof.
Is there a second floor to this building?
Just one small section was going to have what they call a viewing area, and that was going to be on the upper level. The biggest part of the barn is an arena, and it's for horseback shows and training and so forth.
To the architect, the plan for the insulation, how high did you intend to go? All the way to the roof line, or just a partial?
So the state of Illinois has actually adopted the 2018 International Energy Conservation Code, and it basically requires us to, any conditioned space where it's going to be heated or cooled, we're required to enclose the entire thermal envelope. So it would have to go all the way up the walls, all the way across the roof, and you're creating like an insulated shell basically to hold all that conditioned air.
Okay. And
So-
that would tend to encapsulate the noise and might.
Correct. Just by function of its mere existence, is going to have a substantial impact on the noise that can escape through there. And that's kind of our baseline right there. Just by insulating the thing, it's going to be quieter, inside and outside.
Okay. And you will be working with an acoustical engineer?
That is correct.
How many dogs do you intend to potentially have on the property at any one time that are not dogs that you own?
We don't know, because it depends on, I guess, spacing and how much space we have in the pole barn. We want to give them significantly more space than they had at a shelter. So we're hoping to have maybe 8-foot wide dog runs. That would, I mean, we might also have some, I just don't know. It really depends. I don't know.
Okay, the concept of dog runs to me means a fenced area outside of a building. Is that what you're intending?
Right, so if you can hold that, right there. So on the right side, which is the south side of the barn, that's where we would have the majority of the dog runs. And so what that is, a dog run will have an inside area and an outside area. And so outside, it'll probably go out like 10 feet maybe, and inside it'll probably go in 10 feet. And so inside will be the concrete area, or not concrete, whatever material. It's not going to be that material, but whatever is doable under the zoning provisions. And so they'll be next to each other all along the length of that. And then on the east side, there will be some right in the middle of that wall. We are not going to have any on the northeast corner or on the north side of the barn. We thought that would help reduce the noise to you guys. So we originally we had those in our plans to use both sides, but we thought that would not be appropriate.
Is there any reason why you couldn't put all the dog runs on the east side? You've got a...
On the east side or the south side? The south side's the long end.
Unless I'm looking at this incorrectly. Okay,
You mean the south side?
south side.
Right.
Northeast toward the Marzal property.
Okay.
Yeah. So the south side, we plan to start putting dogs on that side, but we determined we wanted to try to have the ability at least to have the section on the east side between the two door structures, which would allow us to have, I think, 4 more dogs. But again, I want everybody to understand this is going to be a very slow process to get to that many dogs to fill that side. We have to make sure we have, this is not going to be a shoddy operation.
I understand that.
All right, so we want to make sure that we have, number one, enough money raised to operate a full-time employee who lives there to handle a certain amount of dogs. However, once we hit could be 5 dogs. We're gonna have to get money to afford another employee, whether it's part-time or full-time, to handle the next 5 dogs. So one person is not gonna handle 20 dogs, okay? Or 15 dogs. It's just, we want these dogs to be cared for. Social interaction is one of the most important things to give a dog a better life. And so someone can't do that if they have to do everything else, cleaning, doing laundry for the dogs, cleaning their bowls, feeding them, giving them water, making sure they get, go for quick walks. We don't want quick walks. We want, time so that they can walk around and play, and they have to supervise these dogs. So that's why it's going to be slow. So we don't know how many dogs, but we would like the option, because there's also an outdoor run on the east side. We would like the option there. But that is, we plan to use the south side first.
Okay. Again, for the record, what are the current dimensions of the existing pole barn?
100 by 200 feet, approximately.
So the north side and the south side would be 200 feet long?
Yes,
And what would be the width of a dog run?
approximately 8 feet. 8 to 10 feet.
All right, if it's 10 feet, then you've got room for 20 dog runs on the south side,
Correct.
maximum.
Correct.
Do you ever intend to have more than 20 dogs?
It is possible, yes. The max we figured we might be able to have would be 31 using this structure.
Kim, is there any contemplation by your department of limiting the number of dogs? Is that something that can be done?
It could be done, it could be limited in the conditions. There's nothing in the Unified Development Ordinance currently that limits it. Could be a little difficult to enforce, but it is something that we have the ability to condition.
You can't count?
We can, yeah, as
Okay.
long as they're not all running around when we go out to count.
I think, I know people might be nervous possibly about the number of dogs, 50, 100 dogs. 31, we would be fine. Capping it at 31, right? I think we talked about that, right, with the structure. Okay. So for purposes of this, we would be okay capping it, but again, it's the, yeah.
If you did an 8-foot run rather than a 10-foot run, you could conceivably get roughly 24 dogs on that south side.
The problem is that the front part, can you pull up the barn again? The front part of the barn, the west side of that structure is not, we can't use, there's no picture of it. It is not like, can you keep going? Hold it, yeah. So that is you see that wall there? So that's probably the first 15 to 20 feet. The entrance is on that's the west side, that door, and then the east side of it is that wall. I believe there's a door up from where the camera is being taken. I believe there's a door there.
Yes.
I'm not sure, is that right?
Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
So I think we're limited on where we can start the dog runs. So we can't quite get them all in there. Right.
Okay, so the door that I'm looking at, what side is?
That's the west side,
That's the west side.
yes. And so on the south side, where the person is standing behind that person, I believe there's a door there is that correct?
Yes, the big door, the roll-up door is right at the corner of the west side, southwest side, okay? There's a man door right next to that, okay? You just barely see it in there. Then down the row is a pair of double doors to the
Right.
main entrance to it.
Okay,
That area was planned for offices area in the lower level where the deck is. The upper level was planned for viewing area for the families and to view their kids riding the horses.
so this area here would probably be for like offices or a medical area for vets to help out or things like
It's
that.
basically 100 by, I believe, 30 feet. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but it's 100 feet wide by 30 feet.
That's fine, that's fine. Are there any big doors on the north side of the property?
No.
Okay, so for the architect, there wouldn't be anything that would be an impediment to proper sound insulation on the north side.
That is correct.
Kim, are there any similar types of shelters currently operating in McHenry County? I thought we did one on 47.
There is an animal care shelter on Route 47, Young at Heart Pet Rescue. Again, permitted by right. They did keep their structures 100 feet away, so it didn't come through a zoning process because it was meeting all the setbacks. But they also have an on-site veterinary clinic in addition to the rescue where they adopt out pets.
Were there any conditions imposed on that organization regarding the number of dogs?
No.
Do you think that that's something that's potentially necessary if this were to be approved?
If it's a big enough concern to the neighbors, we certainly have the ability to do that. It's not something that we do typically limit to animal care shelters that are, and even commercial kennels that are operating in conformance. There's usually not a limit placed on it, but again, to alleviate any concerns, it is possible to put that.
To the architect, if you were to have dog runs on the east side of this building, which is relatively close to the neighbor, how do you soundproof that?
Can you show the diagram again?
Yeah,
Of the
please.
outside?
So you're concerned
north
with the outdoor run, or you're
Correct, the
concerned
outdoor
with-
run. If you have runs on the south side of the building, I'm assuming that the wall creates somewhat of a sound barrier.
That's
If you're
correct.
on the east side of the building, you don't have a wall that's an impediment, so how do you deal with that?
There are products that can be installed on the face of existing fencing that can be used to minimize that sound transmission. There can be landscaping installed to help break down, sound waves, traveling, These tend to be higher frequency sounds, which are directional in nature, which means, when you hear somebody drive around with the stereo cranked up high and you hear the vibration, those are lower frequency sounds. And that's not what dog barking, tends to fall under. It's more on the level of that higher frequency where it's directional. So by putting any kind of barrier in between the source of the sound and the person who might be disturbed, it can be effective. There's products that can be attached to your fencing that serves as a sound attenuation barrier.
Is there currently a solid wood fence on the northern perimeter of the subject property?
I do not know.
There is at the front, I believe, on the
How
west
far back-
side.
How far back does that go, if you know?
Oh, I think does it cover any of the building? Let's see. I don't know. I have some photos that I might be able to get. Now, I guess I would also ask, we intentionally also did not have runs. We eliminated the runs on the northeast corner, so that the runs on the actual east corner would also, the walls would protect them, the sound, because if they go out 10 feet, the east side of the building is still going to stop the sound from going back towards the neighbor's house. Obviously, the dog runs would have a little more sound, but again, the distance between that dog run and the neighbor's house has got to be over 600 feet, I would think.
It was
Is it 500
a couple
feet?
hundred feet.
That's more than that. So
At least.
I would hope that, these are long properties. I don't have, I think there's a Google Earth. Do you have Google Earth of that?
And I did take a measurement, I don't know if I can, look at it real quick, from the neighbor's house to that back fenced-in outdoor play area was about 400 or so feet.
Yeah.
I got from the far northwest, from the northwest corner of the pole barn to the adjacent neighbor's
No,
house.
we don't want that. We want the northeast. We want the north.
Or, yeah, the northeast, excuse me, the northeast corner of the pole barn to the neighbor's house. I scaled it out at 362 feet.
And how about to the neighbor's pool?
300 feet.
But that's not
Approximately.
that's not the outdoor dog run though. The dog run goes further
Right,
east.
the run would be even further than that. That's from the corner of the existing building.
Can you zoom in on that?
Here, let me open up.
All right. So, yeah.
All right, so Right now, you're uncertain in terms of the potential number of dogs, but it appears that you intend to have every dog have its own individual dog run. Is that correct?
Actually, you know what, if we see two dogs that are together in a shelter, I would think we would put them in the same dog run.
Yeah, siblings.
Yeah, siblings.
All right, so conceivably, it's possible to put more than one dog in a dog run, correct?
It's possible, right?
So then conceivably, you could limit your dog runs to the north side only, and still get the number of dogs you wish and have the number of runs, but you'd have it on the, unless I flipped it, south, I'm sorry. You could put them all on the wall that is away from the neighbors, correct? If you can put more than one dog in a run?
Yes, but I would think it would be very rare to find siblings in a shelter. I don't. Well, actually, Melissa, you can probably talk. I mean, how often? Sorry, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Melissa Pounce. I have informed people as far as dogs, and I work with different rescues. I run a kennel, and I have run several kennels, so I can help in the way of training and dogs being together and stuff. It is, there are some that come, together as siblings, and you want to keep as siblings. We can also condition some to be together. However, it is not, it's not a rarity, but it's not all the time either.
Okay, so it's logical to assume that every dog will potentially have its own individual
Right.
run with some exceptions, correct?
With some exception, yes, sir.
All right, so if we're only putting dog runs on the south side and the east side, can we not then come up with a maximum number of dogs?
Sure.
Okay. Would you agree with that, both of you?
Yeah, I mean, you can, it's just hard in this stage, but I think there can be, for sure, it can be agreed upon, a maximum number of dogs. I think at this stage it's just a little bit difficult, but.
I would just add that it's not. I mean, there can be 10 dogs that bark incessantly and poorly behaved. There could also be 40 dogs if you have the proper supervision and the proper training that make less noise than that. So what we're proposing, we're trying to rescue dogs, but we also want to make sure that they are comfortable, that they are socially, they have a socially positive experience not only on the dogs but potential owners. And so we're going to be having people who work with them and work with the dogs.
If I may jump in that.
Yeah.
So what he's doing versus what other people are doing are very different in the way that in your boarding situation, every day you have 30 in and out, you have things changing. There's not going to be as much switch and turnover. So these dogs are here to fix their issues so that they can live out their lives happily or get fostered or adopted. So those issues are going to not only be worked on, but they're not going to be jumbled around much. So it's the change, the dogs coming in and out, the people coming in and out that makes that barking be worse. And that is a problem that he's already fixed by doing this kind of business instead of, not business, but instead of something else.
In your operation, what do you do regarding dog waste?
And dog waste,
Yes.
garbage, waste management.
Okay, but explain, what do you do?
So I'm very OCD, so it's a little bit different. Every time our dogs go out, we scoop them into a garbage bag, and then that area is disinfected with chlorhexidine and bleach to not contaminate, and then those are taken out nightly. The garbages are taken out nightly.
How often is the garbage collected?
Once a week from a garbage, not can, bigger. Yes, I don't exactly know what he would do, but I'm here to advise in as much as I can as far as training, sound.
To the petitioner, what do you intend to do regarding the waste disposal?
Whatever the zoning requires.
So one of the requirements of getting occupancy on the building for that use would be that he would have to submit a report to the McHenry County Health Department. We've discussed that. The health department may have guidance as far as what type of waste disposal is going to be required, how often, floor drains, anything like that is going to go through the health department for their assessment before any occupancy.
Okay, so that's really not an issue of this hearing today.
Correct.
Why do you reference hours of operation?
What was the question?
Why do you reference facility hours of operation every day, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m.?
Sure, so that's when we're going to have volunteers come walk the dogs and give them social interaction. They're going to sign up for that, so it's going to be structured so that we have, a volunteer come, but obviously we want to make sure that they know when they can and can't sign up for that. We're also going to we're hoping to bring in community, people from the community. We want to be a positive part of the community as well as the neighborhood. So we want to help and plan events, whether it's special needs kids, whether it's Cub Scouts, whether it's businesses who want to give their employees volunteer hours. The best thing we can do is to have these dogs interact with people. And
I understand, that's
Yeah.
fine, you've answered that question.
okay.
Kim, is there any reason why we don't have a current plat of survey on the property?
The plat of survey that we have was prior to the structure being built, the pole barn. We did not require a new one because it was pretty recent, and it was shown on the aerial photographs. You didn't feel that it was necessary that he get a new plat of survey.
It's got to be over 2 years old, the survey.
I'm not sure the date on it.
The surveyor's license expired November 30th, 2020, so it had to be before that.
Okay.
The site plan that I had prepared, I had taken that's the old plat of survey, and I laid that on top of the Google Earth image, and that's how we generated our, the setbacks and the property lines that were shown on the exhibit that we prepared.
There's some additional questions potentially to the petitioner, but anything else that you as a petitioner wish to say at this point? I understand.
We also plan to have fencing around that will prevent dogs from escaping. If there's any concerns, we're going to make sure that that is not an issue. There are going to be precautions in that respect. There'll be precautions for which dogs can be handled by the public, which dogs can't. So safety is going to be a very high priority as well. And that's all I have at this point.
And to the architect, anything else that you wish to address at this point?
Not at this point.
We will then take questions from, I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning. My name is Bill Maloney. I am counsel for Christopher and Linda Marzal. They own the property immediately to the north of the subject property. It is their primary residence. They have lived there for 30 years. They've raised their 3 boys there. They have a finished and manicured backyard with a pool, a sand volleyball pit, a fire pit, and even a field goal post for rec football. They object to this request for variation because, in their opinion, it will simply be creating a public noise nuisance. I've heard everything that's been presented here, but there's really been very little comment about this outdoor play area. If you're going to have 30 dogs in an outdoor play area, you're going to have a cacophony of noise. And if you look at the photo on the screen, as well as my photo number 1, and I'll give council, Mr. Kerpel, courtesy copy of our photos, you will see that the play area is right next to their fire pit, which is something they enjoy throughout the summer and fall months. And you can just imagine how are you possibly going to make use of this area with 30 barking dogs, not to mention possibly the smell in July, August, in the heat of the summer. So It is their opinion that a grant of this variation would change the character of the neighborhood, would diminish their use and enjoyment of their own backyard, and would certainly diminish the fair market value of their property. Who coming to look at the Marzal property would not be impacted by a bunch of barking dogs. Also, the Lindsays to the east of this property have registered an objection as well, and although they're not here today, they did sign an affidavit concurring with the Marzals that this is simply not appropriate for this property. You will note that this pole barn, it's only 18 feet away from the Marzal property line. And you can see the volleyball pit is perhaps just another 18 to 20 on the opposite side. So it's in very close proximity, and it's certain to have a deleterious effect on their use and enjoyment of their property. I did note that you made mention earlier of a code violation by virtue of added gravel for the construction of this pole barn, and we have made written demand on the Bayonnes to make some alternative arrangement because of the fact that they raised the level for the construction of this pole barn 2 years ago. It is now channeling stormwater and creating a ponding situation during periods of heavy rain. So not only is that a violation, but we've made a demand that it be rectified so that the conditions during periods of heavy rainfall are not creating a ponding situation. We've just been ignored on that. And while the purposes of the petitioner may be commendable, it's our opinion that this is just not the right area for this. And again, the pole barn, dimensions of 100 by 200, this is a half an acre that's under roof. I was coming in here today thinking that it might be 50 or 75 or 100 dogs. It's certainly able to house a lot of dogs. And even 30 is a concern. And be mindful that the Marzals are not anti-dog. They have 3 dogs of their own, and they're all rescue dogs. But dogs being dogs, when you see another dog, you know, there's interaction. So there's bound to be barking and problem even from their own dogs to the dogs in the play area. And we just feel that it's...
Do the Marzals' dogs run free, if you know?
I believe so.
Yes.
Yeah, they do. We have fencing, electric fencing, but they have the entire run of the property.
So conceivably, they could be attracted by the other dogs who are out there and approach the property line?
Absolutely.
I wouldn't see how they would not be affected, you know, whether you block it visually, you know, dogs have an acute smell. They're gonna know there's dogs on the other side of that fence, on the other side of that building. It's just gonna cause havoc with my dogs. And I have rescue dogs, and we've got them from paws, and we work with a group called Dogology, which has helped us train these dogs, because rescue dogs, they come with special needs. The last one, we've had him 6 months, he's got one eye, and he's got a separation anxiety like you can't believe. And we've worked with them on how to calm, sit, post, and you know, being around a lot of other dogs is a huge issue for this dog. It's just gonna be an absolute mess for us.
What kind of work do you do, Mr. Marzal?
So, again, I've lived there 30 years, and I own a landscape design build firm. I'm born and bred right in Richmond, went to the Richmond High School. Right out of school, I did a stint in the military and started a company called Earth Development. It's a landscape design build firm. I've had it 40 years. And I also own a storm sewer and water a company called K&M Sewer and Water. So I'm very familiar with the impervious issues that are on this property and how it's been filled, et cetera, and we're addressing that. But I've beautified this property really through the talent of my business. that backyard, you see the pictures, it's golf course quality grass. There's not a dandelion on it. And we take pride in that back area. Some of those pictures were just taken at our Thanksgiving yearly. Family comes from Florida, the fire pit you've seen going. I have my company parties there every year. 50 men and women come there, and we use the pool, volleyball. We kick, I have a collegiate goalpost in my backyard. My son was a kicker for Richmond Burton High School, and I erected this. My other son was a basketball player. Erected a basketball court. We did everything over 30 years for our kids at that property to develop this land. And this is just not going to help me one bit.
Question or two still of staff. The issue of water runoff, there was no stormwater requirement because of the current pole barn that was constructed, correct?
I believe a stormwater permit was required, but 20,000 square feet of disturbance triggers the next level of stormwater permit. So I believe that was where that violation came in, was that it exceeded the stormwater permit that was issued.
Okay, so that will be addressed regardless of what happens with
Yes,
this?
our Water Resources Division is handling that violation.
Okay. And you would agree that they're fairly aggressive and they enforce those rules pretty strictly?
Yes, yeah, and they will not close out those files until it is taken care of.
So to some extent, Mr. Marsall, your concern in that regard will be addressed regardless of what happens today. You do have sizable additional structures on your property. Do you use those for your business?
No, the business is not run out of there at all. Our business is at 8107 Wilmot Road in Springgrove, Illinois.
Okay. But why do you have the other structures?
So those structures were all there when I purchased the place 30 years ago.
Okay.
The larger building, the owner had a milk truck, and he used to pull in, and he used to have freezers in the back. It was his business 30-some years ago.
Okay.
So that building is just a caveat to the property. I just use it kind of as a man cave type of thing, in there, and got a TV out there, and the other little building, that's a horse barn. That was there, that's been there forever. I put an addition on the home when we started having children. I put the pool in, but those structures were all there.
They were pre-existing.
Yeah, all existing. I had a horse for a minute, but that was a lot of work, so.
Anything else that you wish to say, Mr. Marsall, or your attorney at this point?
I talked to my neighbor, Luke, behind me. He's as passionate as me. He travels for his work. And here, so there's another dog. There's a German Shepherd breeder on 173. He breeds German Shepherds. It's a business that's been there forever. And Luke sits,
Luke Lindsay.
Luke Lindsay.
Yeah.
His east property abuts this dog, German Shepherd breeder, and the barking. And we'll sit in our house and go, it's dinner time over there. You can find it on here, and it abuts him, and he's nuts about it. It's just from 6 to 6. He goes, that guy has free reign of what he wants to do with his dogs. It's the business that guy has, and he goes, they want to put another dog facility now on my other side. He'll be pancaked with dogs, Luke, and he'll come here whenever we need him at an evidentiary hearing. He just travels for work and did the affidavit today, but he's highly against this because he's already combating this problem next to him now, and he doesn't want another one.
As I'm on the road facing your property, you see the property to the left?
You'd have to go around to 173.
Okay.
So, but he's very deep, so he touches our property on Zarmstroff Road.
Lindsay property is east of the subject.
Right.
We are north. The Shepherd breeders would be further east.
And then,
Further east of Lindsay.
also
So two
the,
properties east.
I'm hearing the traffic, and up front I heard there'll be no traffic. Now I'm hearing about, Boy Scouts, we're gonna have buses and field trips coming to this property all the time. And I hear the volunteers are gonna start pouring in. So, I'm gonna have a commercial thoroughfare coming down that road and going in that driveway. It sounds pretty consistently to maintain these animals, and I commend you, what you're trying to do in the community, but
Yeah.
there's more property that you could go to. You don't have to go very far. Hebron, Harvard, open land area that you could do this all day long without putting this in the middle of a community. It just has so many wrong signs to it. It just has so many wrong signs to it, to do it there. And why are we so driven with that? To be there when there's so really other places that you wouldn't have to fight this,
No, I
fight
know.
the engineering,
I understand.
et cetera, et cetera.
I understand. But you've indicated that there is some water that drains from the subject property onto your property, correct?
It's correct. So,
Pole barn is raised.
right, there's what's called land overflow, and the land overflow,
Well, what I'm trying to figure out is your property is lower than the subject property.
absolutely, they built it up probably 24 inches
Okay, so
higher.
there's no elevation rise that would block any noise. You're sitting below.
Oh, no, not at all. No, it's just the building is high enough to block the land overflow drainage. Everything's flat out there.
Okay. Council, anything else that you wish to add at this point?
My only closing remarks are, the whole idea behind a variance is to alleviate hardship. Petitioners, not even having a pending contract, really are just, they're looking for a purchaser's perk here. We don't feel that it's appropriate. The long-term vested owners of the property should have an interest that is given consideration concerning this variation. And again, this is going to adversely affect both these surrounding properties.
Kim, can you turn to page 17 of the report?
I don't have the full agenda package, I don't know which one, which 17
Can I
is.
show you the report?
That's what,
What is that?
that is a separate parcel number to be.
Why is it so long and thin and?
Let me pull it up on our map here.
Yeah, there it is. What is that?
That's Luke's.
Yeah, that is owned by the same person as the property directly to its east.
Okay. And can you show me where the German Shepherd breeder property be located?
Be this one right here. So this is the property between the subject property and then the German Shepherd Rescue or kennel is right
Okay, so that long, thin strip is owned by the person who would be between the German Shepherd and this property?
there. Correct.
Okay. Does the county in any way take that into consideration in considering this request, that there may be a property owner who is subject to German Shepherd breeder on one side and dog rescue on the other?
Well, each use and each property is looked at on a case-by-case basis, but if that neighbor has a specific concern, it certainly could be taken into consideration. But I have not received anything from that neighbor. You indicated that there was something received?
There's an affidavit.
An affidavit, yes.
Okay, and you're submitting that to the...
We should submit that.
Okay.
Is there copies of that for others?
Sure. Do you have an extra copy?
I have an unsigned copy, I don't have.
That's all right.
I don't
Unsigned
have-
is fine. It's okay.
Okay.
So I guess we have a few comments. If you're done.
If you wish to address any,
Yes, that would be great. Heidi, why don't you introduce
So,
yourself?
hi, my name is Heidi Sparacino. I'm a board member on Forever Home Dog Sanctuary, and I've been
You want
part
to come
of...
up a little? Sorry.
Sure. I've been a part of a rescue / kennel in the North Shore as a volunteer, primary volunteer for 4 years. And one of the things we've learned, if you can hear me, tell me, one of the things we've learned, so I would share your concerns about the dog playing area also. So that an outside dog area, the play yard that's designated, is really for individual dog play with a trainer, with someone interacting. And none of these dogs would be interacted with by anybody who isn't authorized to do so. So even in a kennel environment, you're not putting anybody in a position where they're, it's not going to be a circus. So a kennel is a public entity more or less, or a private entity that invites the public. None of that's going to happen. And when we say we're going to have education, we don't know what we're going to have yet. We think that that'd be a nice thing to do to educate people as to how not to treat dogs, so they don't land up in this situation where they have to be sanctuaried on a per unit basis. Pretty expensive to train them and re-behavior them. But the play yard outside will never be somewhere where there are 30 dogs. So when you use that example, and it's an unintentional exaggeration, but how would you know, right? So there's a company called Dogs Playing, an organization called Dogs Playing for Life based in Florida. And what you do when you have a dog play area, if you want to introduce a dog to another dog, you bring it in there, there's a catch pen, there's a procedure, and dogs, I have tons of video of it. Dogs don't make noise with one another. They're not standing and barking. Dogs bark at stimuli that they don't recognize or understand. That's why kennels are so horribly loud, private or public kennels. So that dog run area is not going to be like, hey, let's all let them out so they can interfere with your lives. I would say that people's dogs in neighborhoods make more noise than dogs, and we have 7 to 10 dogs in a play yard at one time, and they're not sanctuary dogs, they're just shelter dogs. They run together and you can hear them move, but they don't make any noise. In fact, when dogs are with one another and running, they don't know one another, they've just met, they're actually quiet because they're listening for and giving each other cues. So they will correct one another, they might give a woof, they might give a growl, but by and large, dogs don't make noise with one another. I'm sure your dogs don't sit and bark at each other in the house all day long. That would be disturbing and nobody would want that. But that is not what the intent is of that outdoor area. The outdoor kennels, I understand. If 2 dogs are outside and a raccoon walks by, they're going to bark. What you would do as a neighbor, we would hope to do as, whether this property is here or elsewhere, we would do that in any area. If your dogs make noise outside and you have a neighbor nearby, you pull your dogs in. Now, you guys might not because you're on such a large parcel and you may not care what if anyone hears it, because who's going to hear it? In this case, we would hope to be the kinds of neighbors also where if the dogs are let out because their interior space is being cleaned, you alternate the kennels. You can also have material that pulls. So if you have dogs that are very reactive to one another, it could happen. They'll end up decompressing and not doing that. But if you do, you have a piece of mesh that you pull that they can't see through. So you've eliminated the stimuli, or stimulus if there's just one. But these things are easy to accomplish. At no time would any organization like ours be intending to come and say, we have a lot of property and it's ag and you move to an agricultural designation, so forget y'all. That is just a play yard that you let your kids in or your dog in. That is not going to be a group play area to make noise. So I just want to reiterate, because you said 30 dogs.
You unfortunately used the phrase that a dog kennel can be horribly loud.
Absolutely.
So would you want to be living in the property that Luke and Jessica Lindsay are living in if you're between a German Shepherd breeder on the one side and this entity on the other?
So
if something's going to be potentially horribly loud?
I would argue that a German Shepherd breeder would be set up like a kennel. This is being set up like a sanctuary. So if
But would you purchase that property and live between a German Shepherd breeder and this potential shelter if...
I wouldn't live near a breeder because I know how they set up, and they set up like a kennel, and that is not mine. That wouldn't be a choice. I work at a kennel, I volunteer at a kennel, and it's very loud. But I would not hesitate to have a large parcel in a place with responsible owners where they're building essentially bedrooms, in and outdoor bedrooms for dogs. And they have absolutely no intention to create a nuisance for a next door neighbor and to utilize a very large interior space that is insulated. So those are very different things. We're not building a kennel by any stretch.
This is not particularly relevant, but I'm curious. You appear to be a dog expert. Why does my stupid dog bark at me every time I come home? I recognize it.
Mine too.
So a lot of dogs will bark because you will react to it. If you ignore them until they're quiet, they will stop.
turn your,
Just
turn
walk,
turn
just
around.
walk in
Walk in
and
and
go
ignore
about
the-
your business?
Yeah, ignore the-
Without,
Right.
Don't greet them and don't, yeah, not
Stupid
excitement.
doodle, no.
well, first of all, that's the problem.
We've always had
That
shepherds,
is
now
a-
I've got
that
a
is a
dumb
thing.
doodle.
I know there's a lot of discussion about, you know, working with the dogs and training the dogs. I just happen to have 2 adult children who've got rescue dogs, and within 2 weeks, these dogs aren't dogs, they're hyenas. Within 2 weeks, you know why they got rid of this dog. These dogs are absolutely uncontrollable and unmanageable.
What was
Well,
I
So
saying?
I
I think your clients actually, you guys said you had issues with it, right? But
Well, you know, rescue dogs can certainly come with
They
baggage,
do.
you know, and they
There's a reason why
react differently than other dogs.
Absolutely, right.
But you got a trainer for your dog.
We have helped, but that dog, our one dog, Leia, she doesn't want to be around other dogs. Her anxiety is through the roof. Her calming effect is us. Our kids are gone, and we've made a good home for that dog, but when the other dogs got a great day, and he comes out, we have to pull ours in because it's just not comfortable for the dog, and I don't know how he's going to react to. And again, the smell, they are going to know that dogs are over there. Dogs have such an acute nose. You know, whether they don't bark or not, he's still going to know. He's still going to be at that fence.
Yeah, they know,
Jumping.
they know of horses, dogs,
Yeah.
raccoons, or anything else, that's for sure. But if a neighbor moved by next door and you had 4 dogs, if you allow regular, you know, folks not in a commercial environment of any kind to move in, they could have 4 dogs, you get the same problem, so.
Is there anyone else here who wishes to make a statement?
My name is Debbie Legal, I'm the realtor, and the only reason we're not under contract with this property is because of this process and how long it takes to get the variance. We have been in constant communication with the realtor. The owners have been very cooperative in signing all the paperwork in order for us to proceed this way. And if it goes well, we will be going under contract. So the only reason we're not in contract is not to tie them up in case they have another offer coming. But as I said, we are in constant communication with the realtor, and as a matter of fact, she's listening right now to this whole thing. So everyone's on the same page on this end. It shouldn't be a consideration that we're not under contract, because there is a reason for that. We've been waiting to do this meeting for 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. That's a long time to have anyone tied up on a contract for.
Yeah, did you not request a continuance from the last scheduled meeting?
We did.
Okay.
Oh, that was because of these, right, the
There was
petition
another- right.
wasn't worded, we wanted to make sure we did it right.
Okay.
Yes.
That delay was attributable to you, the petitioner.
That is correct.
not
That
us.
is
Still a long process, so to tie up someone.
All right. We've been going through this process for 10 months, so, you know, we'd love to get it started.
Anyone else wish to make a statement?
I just want Melissa, thank you, Heidi, for explaining things. So
I'm short, so I'm moving on.
Melissa actually worked for the German Shepherd breeders, and she can attest that those owners
I didn't know that I would talk about that, yeah.
are completely opposite of how we would treat our dogs and how we would run our facility. I think enough has been said by Heidi, but if you need Melissa to talk about, why their
That's
dogs.
very different
Yeah.
than,
She can do that. I don't know if you've heard enough already.
Yeah, no, I have no doubt as to the sincerity of you and your organization, everything that you intend to do, and also I have no doubt as to what a good thing it is you're trying to do. The question will be whether this is the spot for it.
So, yeah. We've looked, there aren't spots, we've looked for spots, whether it's because of wetlands, whether it's because zoning is hard. And, this is an ag zoning, and we've had to reduce our dogs. We wanted to have more dogs originally, which is fine, because like we said, guys, I love that you guys rescue dogs. And I'm telling you, if we get here, I would love to have you guys bring your friends, your kids, whatever it is, to meet the dogs, to walk the dogs. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. There's a lot of speculation that is always, voiced, like, oh, they're going to be barking nonstop, or the smell. That's a new one. I haven't heard that, but the waste will not be an issue.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah. Oh.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Just about the legality of that property. So if that property did hold this zoning and everything passed, and all of a sudden, just like the horse people, 2 years later, they were gone. Had a little, whatever reason, what if they up and go? And now this place holds all of those zonings, and the next person comes in and he's not so, now I got a dog kennel. I mean, does it all go back to agricultural then?
You're asking me, I'm just a dumb lawyer.
I'm just asking, you know, I mean, if they're forever, how do you know they're gonna be there forever doing this?
Yeah, I'll reiterate, because I believe I said this off the record, but the animal care shelter use is permitted by right in the A1 district. So the variances are just based on the setbacks right now to allow the structures and the runs where they're, 20 feet off the lot line, 45 feet off of the south lot line. If someone were to purchase the property and wanted to keep it, for agriculture, they certainly could,
Right.
convert it right back to agriculture. Or they could, because the variances would stay with the land.
Stays with the land, they can do whatever they want.
They could also do the same use. They could not come in and do a commercial kennel
Right.
with the boarding and training and all of that without going through a conditional use zoning process, but the same use could go in there. Similarly, somebody could take down the building and move it to be, 100 feet off the lot lines and not need to go through any zoning process.
That's an option too, move it over and you're good.
Correct, yes, if it was moved, it would be closer to the Lindsay property in
Shrink it up,
that
though.
case, but that is an option as well.
All right.
That would cost
I'll just ask.
$200,000.
Excuse me, could I make a point too, in regards to the animal shelter uses permitted by right in the A1 zoning district? The map, the site plan that we had provided, where we showed the 100-foot setbacks on there in red. One of the things that we note there too, if we were within that 100-foot setback there for where the animals are kept, then there wouldn't be a need for this hearing in the first place. And as you can see along the whole south wall of that building there, the areas where those animal kennels would be located are within that 100-foot setback. Really, the only areas of kennel that are outside of that setback are on the east side of the building there.
Is that something that they can do?
Yeah, so the.
That's sort of the hardship, excuse me.
Right.
Yeah,
And I see what you're
that's,
saying,
you know,
that, so
to
the
your point.
phase one dog run would be in a conforming location. Obviously, the majority of the structure itself is still within that setback, so the variance would still be needed, but it is correct that those dog runs on the south side are in conformance with the ordinance and would be permitted on their own by our ordinance.
Okay. If they were to do that, do they still have to come up to code on the commercial building?
If they were to move the structure,
Well,
No.
move the structure.
We just had the dogs on the south
If
side.
they just had the dogs within that dotted line area.
if the structure, if the interior of the structure is going to still be used for the animals, then yes, it would still would need a variance because the structure itself.
Can you bifurcate or segregate a portion of a building for commercial versus non-commercial?
You could, but I would probably need to confirm with the zoning enforcement officer whether or not the variance would still be approved or would be required, because the structure still doesn't meet the 100-foot setback.
But if they opted to put up another structure within, we'll colorblind, but looks either red or orange, within that dotted line, they would then meet all the setback requirements and they could do what they wanted to do without the need of our approving or disproving it, correct?
Correct.
But then that structure by no way can be used for dogs at all.
Correct. If the variance wasn't approved and they wanted to put up a new structure, that's correct.
I'm sorry, can you just clarify that? I didn't understand that, sorry. Dogs wouldn't be approved if a new structure was built?
If the variance was either denied or, if it didn't go through, and you opted to put up a new structure
Mhm.
that was within the 100-foot setbacks, or
Oh,
not within, but
right.
complying with the 100-foot setback,
Uh-huh.
you would not need to go through any further zoning process, but you would only be allowed that structure that complies.
Right, and then we couldn't use the existing one for the dogs.
I guess to the point is, if that building was built 80 feet south, we wouldn't need to be here.
Right.
But it's there though.
Right, but I think the
Right, and
concern
that's
is,
the hardship.
right, that's the tricky part, because
Yeah.
the dogs, the outside dog area, most of it is within outside the 100 feet.
Yeah, right, the play area too is.
Mr. Mayor, this gentleman would like to speak.
I just have one quick question. I'm looking at a drawing and looking, the top part of the picture, in other words, that's the north side, am I correct?
Yes,
The darkened area inside the barn that you're showing there,
yes.
is that the arena?
That's a shadow from Google Earth.
It is just shadow?
It's just a shadow. It's the
Okay,
back side of the
It would
roof.
look like it's
Yeah.
the arena, and it would be on the wrong side, isn't it?
It's just a shadow from the Google Earth image.
Okay.
And also, I just want to make sure that everyone's aware that you guys do have nice landscaping on the side too, all along the property line, right?
Yeah, but it's not evergreens, those are more towards the front.
On the north side of the,
Right.
oh. What's the stuff on the north side?
I have a bunch of white birch originally, and
Oh,
then
those
I've got
guys?
evergreen, and
Okay.
then I've got
Got it.
regular trees.
Okay. I mean, the smell's not gonna be an issue because I'm not gonna want you guys to smell it.
Kim, what's the rule, what happens if they're gonna have people coming onto the property to be volunteers or whatever in terms of restrooms and sanitation and septic?
That would all be reviewed by the health department. They will review based on the capacity that's necessary based on the report that the applicant would submit to them. So they will want to know how many employees, how many volunteers, if you have any members of the public coming, how many dogs, all of that they will take into consideration as far as what is required.
Question? Would you then have to put bathrooms in, additional septic expansion? Or are we gonna line outhouses up?
No, they don't allow for outhouses, so they would have
Yeah,
to put in.
'cause I don't
ADA
like-
compliant.
They're
They would-
gonna-
There's an outhouse over there for quite a while.
Well, you got an improvement then. No house.
Yes, it would need to meet ADA compliance.
Yeah. So the purpose of the house also is for people, I mean, again, volunteers, 2 or 3 an hour, all right? Nothing crazy.
But it could require you to put in additional septic.
Actually,
May I ask, do you have an operating dog sanctuary? Because I went online trying to look.
I don't know.
You don't, so this is a brand new venture for you?
Yeah, that's why I recruited a team.
Okay, okay,
You
so.
have to understand, he's trying to help the world in 2 ways.
Okay, well, I just wondered if he had any experience.
He wants to quit being a goddamn divorce lawyer.
Definitely.
Did I say that out loud?
Yeah, so that's why I recruited the most qualified people I knew. We have a vet tech, we have people who are on 501c3 boards who basically do this already. They've been doing that. As Good as Gold is one of them, our secretary. So yeah, these guys have passion, and they're not gonna let these dogs. They're not gonna let them, have a bad life, and in turn, they're not gonna let you guys have a bad life, okay? I understand, I absolutely understand your concerns, and I wish there was a place you could go that was not a kennel to see, because obviously when you guys walk to kennels, those dogs don't know you, and they probably all bark constantly.
Especially the other one that's close.
Yeah, the German Shepherd barking, our guys are gonna probably bark less than them because we're gonna actually be supervising the dogs.
You guys have to behave the big bosses here.
Oh, no.
Something, you had brought up the point about the septic field as well. The state of Illinois, that's actually mandated by the number of bedrooms that are in the residence. When you get to, so for the house, that is what it is.
I
When you
understand
get
for
to the-
residential, but
Right,
for
when you get to the
commercial.
larger building, then that's
That's to
an
be
open-
subject to the
that's an
commercial
open
standards.
question.
I mean, we'll bring anything that needs to be brought into compliance, we will do, absolutely.
We do have some standards that have to be addressed. I passed out a copy to you. We need to go through those and we can potentially wrap this up. Number one, isn't it true that the particular surrounding shape or topographical condition of the specific property involved will result in a particular hardship upon the owner as distinguished from the mere inconvenience if the strict letter of the regulations were carried out? Isn't that true?
Yes.
And you have an unusual situation that a pole barn was built in compliance with these standards. You're now attempting to change the use of that and that's what causes you to not be in compliance. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Although it is possible that you could use a portion of the building for the intended purpose that you wish, and that could be 100 feet away from the lot line, correct? As we saw, if you conducted this within that dotted red.
Oh, yeah, right. So if I restricted the dog's use to 20 feet of the inside portion.
Okay. Isn't it true that the conditions upon which the application for a variation are unique to the property for which the variation is sought, and are not generally applicable to other property within the same zoning district? Isn't that true?
Yes.
And this one is obviously true. The purpose of the variation is not based exclusively upon a desire to increase the monetary gain realized from the property.
Correct.
It's going to cost you money, isn't it?
What's that?
It's going to cost you some money, isn't it?
Right.
And isn't it true that the alleged difficulty or hardship is caused by the ordinance and has not been created by any person presently having an interest in the property? Is that
Correct.
true?
Yes.
And that's because the pole barn was built pursuant to the setback as defined by a different set of rules, and you're trying to potentially change that, and you're going from a 20-foot setback to a 100-foot setback, correct?
Yes.
And this one may be subject to some disagreement. Is it true that the granting of the variation will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to other property improvements in the neighborhood in which the property is located? Can you address that, please?
Sure. So I do not believe it would be a detriment to our neighbors, especially since they already are dog lovers and they rescue dogs. Our dogs are going to be cared for just as they care for their own dogs. So I do not believe it will be a detriment to them. It will certainly not be injurious. We will have fencing up in case a dog happens to break off a leash or their collar breaks. We'll have fencing. No improvements at this point, except for inside the structure to make it actually, to improve it and to help to make it less detrimental if there is any detriment.
In terms of the public, you've already made your positions known in reference to that particular standard, so I'm aware of your concerns. And number 6, is it true that the proposed variation will not impair an adequate supply of light and air to adjacent property, or substantially increase the congestion in the public streets, or increase the danger of fire, or endanger the public safety, or substantially diminish or impair property values within the adjacent neighborhood? Can you address that, please?
Sure. It will not impair any light. The structure is not being increased in size. It will not it will not impair any air. It will not, because again, the physical structure is the same. Congestion, it will not substantially increase the congestion. Again, maybe a few volunteers here or there. Impair the property values within the adjacent neighborhood. Well, as you guys already mentioned, I forgot your names, I'm sorry. There's already a German Shepherd breeder that they're complaining about. So our land is going to be better than theirs. So I don't see how, if someone is not going to buy their property, it's going to be because of the breeders, not because of our property. In fact, they might actually like be next to a sanctuary if they have kids or grandkids. So it's a sanctuary, again, not a kennel.
Counsel, do you wish to respond to that?
Yes, we vigorously object to the items number 5 and 6. We do believe it is detrimental to the public welfare, changes the character of the neighborhood, brings what is tantamount to a commercial enterprise right adjacent to the Marzal's residence, and will absolutely diminish property values in the area, particularly the Lindsay property, which is now wedged between will be wedged between two dog operating enterprises, and the Marzals, whose backyard will be adjacent to the doggy playland. I mean, it will be 15, 20 feet from their fire pit, from the volleyball. I mean, it's right on top of them. So we believe that 5 and 6 are reasons alone not to grant the variance.
But you understand that the request is really for a variation of the setback and not for the approval of
Yes.
his operation. Does that change your answer to 5 and 6?
deny the variance and allow them to just use that 20 feet within the dotted line that we were speaking of, that would certainly cut the number of dogs down.
And number 7, the granting of the variation requested would not confer on the applicant, that's you, any special privilege that is denied by this ordinance to other land or structure in the same zoning district. Can you respond to that, please? I'm looking at you.
Yeah, I'm just reading.
You're a
this.
lawyer, you should be able to do this. If somebody else had a structure that was built that was 20 feet away from the property line legally, but someone tried to change the use of that building, and now you needed a 100-foot setback, if they made that request, would you oppose it, or do you think that that should be granted?
If they had something already 20 feet back and they wanted it to move 100 feet back?
Similar situation, somebody builds a structure like the one you have on the property here,
Yeah.
and it's legally 20 feet away from the lot line, but they change the use of that building. So now the zoning rules say it has to be 100 feet off the lot line, and they came in and said, we want to get a variation, we want to keep the building where it is 20 feet away. Would you think that that's something that should be granted or considered?
Sure.
Good answer.
Good.
Kim, the question I have, I guess 2 things. I know that they are in a hurry to get this done, although we were not responsible for the last delay. To some extent, I need time to kind of think about this. This thing gives me a bit of a headache. But the bigger question is there any way to somehow bifurcate this structure or segregate a portion of this building so they're in compliance with the lot line? Is there a way to get an answer on that?
I would like to ask Renee Hamlin, zoning enforcement officer. So a portion of the structure, I don't know if you were listening in, but
No, I wasn't.
does meet the 100-foot setback, where they have the dog runs proposal on the south side of the building.
Can you bring it up online?
Oh, yes. We bring the site plan up here. So you can see that the southern portion of the structure is compliant with the 100-foot setback.
Here.
The red dotted line is 100-foot
Yeah.
setback.
Yes.
If they were to somehow put up a structural barrier inside to only allow for the dogs to be south of that 100-foot line, would that be acceptable without a variance, or would
Yeah, I
they?
don't think we can
So
deny
as
it.
long as they weren't using the full structure
But
up to that.
what happens with the rest of the structure? If it becomes effectively commercial, what do they have to do in terms of fireproofing and putting in concrete? Do they have to put a concrete floor in the entire building? Right now, it's basically sand.
Well, it's an ag building. And I think that, I'll have to check with the building official, but I would think that it would remain an ag building for this use.
Okay, so that's a question I need to answer before I can
Yeah.
make a decision.
Yeah. I believe the portion where the actual animal care shelter, whether it's offices, restrooms, the dogs being held, I believe would need to meet commercial compliance. But the rest of the building not being used for it, I believe would be agricultural still.
All right, so I need that question answered.
Okay.
Conversely, from petitioner, I need an answer to the question of, if that were possible, that would thereby limit your usage of it, and would that be acceptable, or would you intend to still proceed with your request? I'll need
So
that.
taking away 80% of the indoor play area for dogs? Is that, I think that's what you guys are saying, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, unless the owners are willing to knock off 100,000 or so the sale price, that would be tough to do. Because here's the problem, we're the Midwest, right? So I went to Sanctuary in Texas to do research, and it's great. They can keep their dogs out outside. They don't need a physical structure to play. They don't need the space like we do. But in the winters, these dogs, we want them to have exercise, we want them to play, so.
I understand, but that's a question you have to answer as to whether you would persist in your original request or if you would agree to modify it. You don't have to give me the answer right now.
Okay, thank you.
We'll continue to the next meeting. When is that?
It would be January 10th at 11 a.m.
I hope everyone understands why it has to be continued. And this is not an easy decision. And I want to compliment everybody for how they presented themselves today. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you guys.
Yep, you too.
Happy holidays, everybody.
You too.